Alrighty then, welcome everybody to another interview for BookBase with graphic novelist Dash Shaw. Dash is a comic book writer who's not only worked on projects like Bottomless Belly Button and Body World, but he's recently released Blurry, a graphic novel that has been received well by the public. At any time during this interview, if you're interested in following Dash after, please feel free to check out his social media at dash_shaw on Instagram and his website www.dashshaw.net. But Dash, I just want to say again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you,
Yeah,
thank you.
I don't see that it's recording. Is it recording on your end somehow?
Yes, it's recording on my end. Yeah, just because
Cool,
on
cool.
Zoom sometimes like the record. I've had experience with being like recording stuff at school, and sometimes like it just fumbles the bag, and I'm like, all right, well there goes my research. So that's why I like to have it on a separate thing. But yeah, of course. And just to get started, I just want to ask, like, this is just really interesting because we really haven't had a lot of conversations with not only comic book artists, but just graphic novelists in general. But I did do some research on you. Number one, I think it's cool they have a Wikipedia page. I don't really talk to a lot of people that have information on Wikipedia. That's really cool. But I did see that you credit your father for inspiration, saying that you guys made comics together before you were even able to read, and your dad would write the text and you would do the illustrations and stuff. And you also worked on your high school newspaper, and when that discontinued, you decided to just take on your own mantle and decide to create your own mini comics. But besides your father and like your journey and like your own innovation, like what were your inspirations growing up to pursue comic book writing? Were there any notable?
Well, you can't believe everything, best to not believe anything on Wikipedia, but all those things that you said are true.
Oh,
So,
really?
so there you go.
Oh my gosh, Dash, I'm so sorry. I
No, no, I said they are
Oh, they
true.
are. Okay, perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay,
So
okay.
normally I don't trust. Usually, whenever someone said I read on Wikipedia, and then it's like, oh, I don't know where that came from, but Um, no, that's true. Yeah, I grew up with a lot of comics around the house,
Hmm.
which is now that I know other cartoonists is kind of unusual. Usually there's like an older brother, an older sibling that cartoonists have that kind of are hip to the cool stuff. But
Right.
in my case, my dad was hip to they underground comics, and that was the time also of like Sin City and just unusual comics um and he liked like Hong Kong movies, which back in the 80s 90s you would kind of get them on VHS tapes before like Jackie Chan was really well known over here, or like even I remember my dad like explaining to me about Chow Yun Fat and how cool Chow Yun Fat was, and to him, and he like noir things, and um so it was so they didn't have that glow of being transgressive, really, because if your dad is it's hard for something to be transgressive if your dad is into it. A lot of cartoonists, part of it is that it's where you see messed up things in comics, um or they're bad, they're that I didn't have that feeling. Um but uh so um and then I went to an arts magnet program, high school, that was like, it was a public school, but it would be like you would go to have arts art classes for half the day, and that was also before the internet was huge, and so if you liked drawing and painting, you got it from printed media, you got it from comics or cartoons on TV, especially if you didn't live in a place with lots of museums. um, so liking drawing was liking printed media, and comics were the place for figure drawing. And So then I got into doing like figure drawing, figure painting classes, and then I went to SVA in New York. I moved up there the week of 9/11, um, and that was my freshman week at SVA, and then I the larger world kind of came into focus a bit more.
Absolutely, yeah. What during your journey, I'm assuming like this was also starting when you were working with your dad, and then you went to your arts program, and then you went to university. But did you always kind of have this feeling that you wanted to work with comic books, or was there a moment where you were just trying to like find out what career you wanted to go for? You were just experimenting, and then like over time you kind of got more clarity, or was it always just like one
It was
direction?
always, it was always comics,
Mhm.
and I liked cartoon, animations a lot too. And back then, I think also kind of still today, comics and cartoons are very connected. Like you like you like the X-Men cartoon on TV, and the X-Men is based on the comic, and the cartoon show kind of looks like a comic. And also, that was when anime was becoming more and more popular in the United States, and so it'd be like, the Akira movie was written and directed by the person who drew the Akira comic, and um, so I like, that was my world. It was never like gallery art or other things, but the uh, the but making animations felt impossible until really shortly after college, when it was sort of early internet animations that I saw where um, yeah, bit kind of the technology allow for me, making GIFs and Photoshop and things like that made animation, the idea of making animations more possible.
Right, absolutely. No, that's cool. And I also saw that you've had experience with animation as well because you've created like you've directed movies like Crypto Zoo and other examples of like that. And in your experience, what has been something that has felt more personal to you? Because I know you grew up with comic books, but then you've also dabbled with animation and stuff. Are those two forms of media, in your opinion, more closely related than like other people would think? You just brought it up now with comics and with like cartoons, but I know that there's other examples of animation as well, with for example Crypto Zoo. Do you think your skills being a graphic novelist and being comic book writer or ever translated to being an animator as well, or being able to direct? Because I feel like it's a different skill set with being able to use cartoons.
It is a really different skill set. There, some of the early animations I did were basically like slideshows,
Mhm.
that would be one drawing on the frame for a couple seconds, and I didn't know much about voice recording, and so I would pull audio from other sources like blind date episodes or just other things.
Mhm.
Um, so and the kind of animation I liked was always related to comics, like the first season of Astro Boy by Tezuka, a cartoonist, and the Charlie Brown Christmas special is an obvious example where they're kind of directly taking things from the comic. Um, but they are really different skill sets, and so I had to learn a lot, and it took me a long time. Like I started trying to make an animated feature independently. I don't know, when I wanted, when I was 23 or something, and I went to the Sundance Labs when I was 26.
Mm.
But my first feature came out when I was 33.
Right.
So it was all those years of trying to. It took me, I think, 10 years to kind of learn how to write a screenplay. Not that, yeah, I mean, just it was a learning curve for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's still exciting. I mean, just seeing just the amount of things that you've done in general, like I think is really cool because most people that I would picture as authors or writers, to see them also being directors are usually rare. Like I've heard examples, of course, of people that have written their own screenplays and then they've directed it. But usually, especially in our world with literature and books, it's rare that you see someone that writes a book and like would be at an event at Barnes and Noble, and then at the same time they're over there directing, recording voice recordings and everything. So that's a really
Well,
unique.
Clive Barker's first book was Hellraiser. I mean, his first movie was Hellraiser. He
Right.
wrote and directed that. That's incredible.
Incredible, incredible. Oh
Kicked
my
it out,
gosh.
knocked it out of the park, first time. Of course, but I was thinking more of the anime people, like Katsuhiro Otomo, and that was his first feature. That was pretty wild, and I don't know, definitely, Miyazaki drew thousands of pages of comics. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind was just one of them. He drew a bunch of other comics that some of them have come over here, but and of course, Winsor McKay drew comics and did cartoons, and so. But they're very different skill sets, and um, But I guess it helped that I didn't think like I never wanted to direct live action movies, and
Mm.
I didn't the kind of animations I liked were always kind of like those comic things.
Right.
So it,
Cool, cool. Yeah, I mean, going back to comic book writing, and this is just unique because again, we don't really talk to a lot of comic book artists, and I'm just so just curious. What is your writing process like, and how do you choose your subject for creating your graphic novels? And some examples are like for Bottomless Belly Button, I really got the idea that it really focuses on strained examples of romance. Like it's about a dysfunctional family, and you have different examples of people having different phases in their romance life. Some of them, I mean, most of them are just different, and like if anything, yeah, like it said, it was dysfunctional. And Body World focuses more on conformity and the struggle of being your own individual through the eyes of the main character. And then I just wanted to ask, like, how do you go about writing that? Is that something that comes about like you're walking down the street and you see something and you go, wait a minute, that's an interesting theme, I should write something about that? Or is it something that you've always had in the back burner where you're like, I have the idea, I'm just waiting for an opportunity to really showcase it? How does that work? Because I just think it's so cool.
Thanks. No, the they've come about in different ways. Like the the bottomless book. The initial idea was that it would have a long dinner table scene.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of in the beginning, near the beginning of the book, and um, because I had seen like scenes in comics before that were kind of like that. Like um, the Hernandez brothers will have scenes where there's a bunch of characters that you kind of know all talking, but I just thought it would be an interesting thing to attempt to do, like a dinner table scene where there's a bunch of people and they're all talking and they have crisscrossing conversations, and that it's long. Um, Meaning the you get a full actual dinner table conversation with all the awkward things that happen in that.
Right, right.
Um, so then that that also was paired with the idea of a book that felt like an autobiographic comic, but was from too many different characters' points of view to actually be an autobiographic comic. And Blurry, my new book Blurry, feels a bit like that too, where
Right.
the way it'll dip into different people, and so because the autobiographic comics were huge. I mean, they still are huge, but they were kind of the majority of alternative comics in the '90s. Everyone had a little cartoon version of themselves, um, and I liked them, but I don't know. I just had kind of different goals.
Right.
Um, so uh, that so usually it's some kind of content idea of a story about something, and then whatever the story's about suggests a form, suggests maybe what it should look like or how it should be drawn, or um, yeah, they're usually kind of story ideas first, as opposed to drawing ideas or
Right.
form ideas.
I think it's really interesting how you start off with the dinner scene where you're like, okay, I want to create an actual dinner conversation with all the awkward intricacies that come into play, and then the story kind of evolves from that. I think that's a really cool, interesting point because I feel like when people try to create stories, they don't think about the particular scene. They're usually thinking about like a overarching theme that they need to follow, or they're trying to tie themselves to something specific, like, oh, it needs to be a gigantic, for example, it has to be about a war, it has to be something gigantic, something huge. While for you it kind of gives me the vibe where you're focusing the other way, where you're starting with something small, where it's like, I just want a dinner scene with people, and then from
Yeah,
there let it
you
grow.
know what kicks off a book can be it can be anything. It can even be, you know, a really bad idea. It
Right,
can, or like not the initial motivation could be anything.
right, right,
It could
absolutely.
be just wanting to draw cars or something. Like it doesn't really matter the first, whatever gets you excited to the drawing board to get you going, and then it kind of turns into its own thing.
That's really interesting because I feel like some people would be overwhelmed about the idea that they feel like they have to make something good, and I feel like that might take them away from that. Where even though they are excited about cars, if they feel like people like something else, I feel like they'd be more hesitant to kind of follow their dream. But it's really, it's really invigorating to hear that someone like you, that's even written so many works, has worked so much in the industry, comes out saying that like, yeah, still like follow your dreams, like work with something that you enjoy rather than working with something that the audience, quote unquote, would want. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what an audience wants. That I haven't figured that one out.
Oh, good, good. No, I hope you never do because you're doing a great job already. Like, like there's no, I
Oh,
don't think
thanks.
there's ever, yeah, of course. I don't think there's ever a reason. And this is something that I talked to Jesse about before. Jesse and I were talking about the balance between what the audience deserves to have and what the creator should give. And it's like a back and forth conversation where it's like the audience would, would be like, oh, I want this. But if the creator doesn't
What
see
does
that,
Jesse say the audience wants?
the Jesse says that the
To read it to me.
audience has no
I'm still
reason to
listening.
care about anything you make. And so if you know that
That's
the
true.
audience has no obligation to care about you, why would you care about them? And it's like this
Oh, well,
idea.
that's pretty. I used to think that, but I don't. I don't think that way anymore.
Right, right. I mean, I think it's a really good start because I think what it does is that it creates a very good sense of individual self where all that matters is your self expression. And I think that ends up becoming more profound in just in general when you're showing off your work because you're just relentlessly you and that's enough. And I think that really carries a long way. But then we also talked about Star Wars, where you have an example where there's things that people expect or want to a certain level, and there's this
Hmm.
weird, masochist, like this weird like pain relationship where if somebody hears that you want something, they won't give it to you because that's not what they want to do, and Jesse's
Right.
whole
Well,
thing, yeah,
Jesse had all those experiences on Adventure Time where he had a very, you know, vocal fan base that
right,
kind of wanted. So I don't think I didn't, I didn't work on that show. I never experienced that. But I drew a comic based on the Clue board game,
mm,
and I did think while doing it, okay, like if I just liked Clue and I bought this, would I be happy? And I tried to um, scratch that itch for those people. I don't know how many of those people there actually are,
right,
um, but I wanted to deliver for them, and I had great love for them. The imaginary Clue fan audience. Um, and I feel like that project was also 100% me. Like I
right.
didn't feel like I was compromised. Um, but I'm that is the cliche, is the opposite of that, is where you are doing something for the imaginary audience and you are compromising yourself. Yeah, I've never personally had that, but I haven't done a lot of commercial things
Right, right,
to in that degree. I also did a section of a show called 13 Reasons Why.
right. On
It
Netflix,
was
you
like a
did the dream sequence. Yeah,
dream scene. And that I also felt was, satisfying for me, and I didn't feel like I compromised my soul or anything. It was quite an fun, kind of interesting, formal problem. I didn't like write the script for that. I just was just drawing it. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't have any terrible sellout stories. And even for sometimes I've been hired to write a screenplay for something that doesn't come out, and it'll be an adaptation or something, and I'll be thinking about the audience. Um, and I've been very happy with those, and like by the time it's by the time it's done, it's felt like it's my thing.
Right.
Um, but for the a lot of times the books like Blurry or that are my self-generated projects, they the goals aren't so clear to me, and so I don't even know what I don't I don't know, is this supposed to be funny or what. They're usually a bit more mysterious to me.
Right, right. I think it is definitely warming to, like, it's a warm feeling to know, and this is coming from you and Jesse's words, where it's great to have the audience in mind, but it's still great to still follow what you feel like is really good. Like, I think there's definitely a balance, and you and Jesse definitely have this conversation, which I think is beautiful, where there's a good chunk, which I would say is like 80% or 90%, where it's like, okay, like, I do want to create something that's based on what I feel like I want to make. It's something that I care about. And then I think the 10% is about making sure that for those that read it, it communicates well. Where, if you do want to create something like, for example, the Clue board game comic that you created, if you did want to create it for like-minded people and other people that did love the board game, I think the importance would be, okay, how do I make sure that I communicate the love and I communicate the story that I'm trying to present with this Clue board game. And I think that's really
Yeah,
cool.
you gotta have, Colonel Mustard has to do his thing. And Scarlet, they gotta. You can't. You can't put out a Clue comic and not give each of those characters their due. It would be a real bummer.
Right, right, absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
but what is kind of interesting though is you can really pour yourself into something and it completely not translate at all.
Right,
So sometimes it being a personal thing is almost like a drug that distorts your perception of what you have on the page. You're like if you draw, you know, my girlfriend broke up with me and your girlfriend just broke up with you. You're like, this was such a powerful panel, but it didn't translate
right,
to whoever's reading it. You didn't manage to shoot the emotion into the panel, so they just don't care.
right, right,
Um, so somehow, magically shooting the emotion into the thing is the trick.
right, absolutely.
Um, the and all with movies, they're they're like little ecosystem is so much different than comics, and you can do a screening of a movie and you can feel like everyone in that room loved that movie, and then do a different screening of the same movie and think, wow, that one really bombed.
Right.
But the movie stayed the same, theoretic, and so I don't know. It becomes a bit of a um, event. I've maybe my movies more than most, or I maybe have a distorted perception of it, but some people are into them, some people are not.
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
you just kind of keep on trying to make them.
Right. I think it's the struggle of trying to balance the two worlds, I think, creates creative expression, because I feel like if people always knew what other people wanted as a creative, I feel like it would create some of a non-conscious bias where I think you would, like, without realizing it, kind of dip into popular themes or demands to kind of fit the image, while I feel like the other way, where it's like you're tunnel visioning and you have no idea of what the public wants. You're just kind of trying to create something, yet it has no communication. Yeah, like, it could be a little bit disruptive because people are looking at your work and they're like, what the heck is this? But I feel like that's cool because there's so many great examples, especially in the art world, where you see a painting, and I'm sure you've had this moment where you look at a painting and somebody will be like, yeah, I see the beauty in this, and you're looking at garbage, and you're like, dude, what is this? You're like, I don't know what this is. Like, I don't know why you're talking about it, but the fact that people have different understandings of their definition of art, or like just in general of, like, what really makes them emotionally attach themselves to other objects, just other ideas. It really creates this really beautiful world of, like, creativity, imagination, just innovation in general. And this is actually something that I wanted to ask you, and this leads into this question perfectly. So I know you recently released a Blurry, and again, congratulations. I think it's awesome that you just created
Thanks.
something that is about everyday lives of regular people who contemplate everyday decisions. And this is something that I remember you talked about at the secret headquarters when you were being interviewed. But it definitely struck a chord with me when I read about Blurry, and instead of expecting something that was like grand or something, I was instead over like I thought it was amazing how you focus on something that other people overlook, which is everyday decisions. I feel like every people make it all the time. If you always have to decide, what do I want to do? Do I want to go for something? Do I want to stay back and be more be more reserved? You decide to create a whole graphic novel about this, and I just wanted to ask why. I feel like this is something that not many people would want to create something about, but you went ahead and did Blurry. What really made you feel like you wanted to create something off of a topic that I feel like other people would overlook, I guess?
Well, the you know, the the mundanity of the low stakes of it was kind of part of the the mission. Um, like an ambient album like Brian Eno or something. It's like nothing's too high, nothing's too low. It's just a zone
Mm-hmm.
that you dip into. And I find that kind of like it soothes one's body.
Yeah.
Um, so that the but it's hard to maintain that tone because you want to put in a joke or make something really dramatic happen. So the goal was to try to maintain the zone.
Right.
Um, and so I mean, nothing really dramatic happens in the book. I don't think there's any real out and out jokes. There's little things that kind of touch up against that, but I still think that um, it's a it's a consistent pool
Mm-hmm.
that if you're especially kind of I realized later there were so many terrorizing things in the outside world happening while I was working on the book. It was drawn over the past 7 years. Um, and I think that the fact that the book was so um, even or not kind of helped me work on it because it kind of soothed my mind um, to spend time in that pool.
Right.
Um, it's not it's, I really like kind of utopian art, like, Star Trek is a great example of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's, uh, um, I believe in that, that art mission kind of politically and just personally, like but I, but I haven't been able to make a utopian thing. Um, but there's something about that kind of mundane zone that does something similar to the brain where it's a bit of it's not escapism, but it's I don't know, it's like a cat on your lap or
Right.
something. Like it's I don't know, I can't, it's a little hard for me to find the exact words for it.
Right.
I
Right.
find it healing in some way.
I think it's very soothing. I think there's a genre of animation or like anime. It's called like slice of life, and I've definitely
Hmm.
seen a bunch of shows where the story is not anything dramatic. It's just the story of a guy that just goes to high school, makes friends, or it's something
Yeah.
small where it's like the story starts off with somebody that's really shy, and the whole show is about him trying to make one friend, and
Hmm.
every episode is him messing up, and then the last episode is there's usually like, the last scene or something, he sits down, he accidentally makes a friend, and it just shows that, like, like it's just something small. It doesn't have to be anything grand. It's just something that's really minute and just something that's very special for that one character. And I do think it is
Yeah,
soothing.
I feel like there's tons of examples of it, and I didn't really feel like it was, I think I did it in my own way, but
Right.
it's definitely lots of people have done it.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And this is also something that I can ask you because I feel like you have a unique experience with creating novels or graphic novel and comics. What do you think are the differences between writing a book and creating a graphic novel? And this was something that was mentioned at the secret headquarters because I think one of you, it was either you or Ollie, I don't remember, but you guys brought up the idea of using physical space to convey your message through like text bubbles or
Oh
the
yeah.
actual animation of like a person walking, while for a novel it's more like George R. R. Martin where you're creating descriptive like writing where it's like the person gets up from his table, walks across, the table has apples on it, while for you I feel like it'd be different because you're using space to convey that message. So besides that, like, do you also see other differences between writing a book and creating a graphic novel or a comic?
Yeah, I think at the secret headquarters event, what I said was like, you could have someone say a word bubble here
Mm-hmm.
and it's not funny, but then if you move it down here, it is funny
Right.
because there's some kind of spatial timing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the they are it's very, very different than a book, and a book can really there's something that I think is so fascinating is, do you know the artist Charles Burns?
I do not know the artist Charles Burns.
he 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 draw he's the best inker there ever was. He can makes these incredible thin brush lines. He drew a great comic called Black Hole, and his new book Final Cut is really great.
Hmm.
um but he has absolute kind of technical, formal, like hand mastery of brush lines. um but for many years he didn't letter his comics. His wife lettered them.
Hmm.
And I thought, this is so incredible that someone whose hand is so perfect at doing these drawings is can't do the letters, and that there actually is something different about letters and pictures.
Right.
It's some kind of different part of your brain that maybe if he was tricked into the letter D just being a form instead of the letter D, his hand could do it.
Mm-hmm.
But his normal handwriting isn't what he wanted for the comic.
Right.
Um, so all of that to say, I think they occupy different parts of the brain. And if you draw comics, or I'm sorry, if you read comics very early, you can get tuned into their like own unique language. But I understand people who have a hard time reading comics because you're putting these two things together that are very different, words and pictures, and um, uh, yeah, I mean um, yeah, they're different.
Do you think spatial timing is something that is acquired through reading comics, or do you think it's also something that you have to experiment with yourself to understand how it works? Like, I feel like that'd be something that new comic book creators or new, graphic novelists, if they're coming out with their first work, do you think that that would be something that'd be harder to master, which is the spatial timing of when to put the right message, or do you think that's something that just comes with the process of just working at it and then you end up refining the ability to understand, like, oh, okay, this is where the funny line should be, oh, this is where we should put the speech bubble here?
Yeah, I mean, think people get better at it,
Mm-hmm.
as they keep making them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Okay, cool. And I just wanted to ask because I think this is also a great question for somebody that's so heavy in comic books and graphic novels, but where do you see the future of the graphic novel industry and where do you see yourself in that future with either animation, graphic novels, or cartoons, or even comic books? Sorry.
I'm just hoping to kind of keep myself going, doing my thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all. The industry as a whole, I don't know. I can't. It's it's scary. Like, I want bookstores to exist, and I love these things, and the books as a medium have have been around so long. Like I think that there's a reason that they've stuck around for so long, um, and the the sustained attention, the attention that books require, um, should be seen as their strength, and uh, someone being able to focus and read a book, um, is healing and powerful and wonderful, and there's so many I know there's always been little distractions, but I feel like we're at an all-time high of little pings and little things that are depleting one's ability to pay attention, to focus on a single book.
Yeah.
So I hope maybe that it swings back, or the cool the cool people will always be into it, no matter how marginal it becomes,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Got it. No, I'm totally with you. I totally understand. I deleted TikTok. I can't do it anymore. Just endlessly scrolling just for like a tidbit of dopamine. I can't do it because I realized it was affecting my attention span with so many other things. I tried reading a book and I had the urge to get on TikTok while reading, which I think is insane
mm,
because I never thought I'd get that feeling before, but I get it. It's just we live in a world with so many alerts, notifications, the idea that you always have to keep on top of things like immediately. And maybe social media also plays a part in this, but I do think that especially when it comes to like stuff like reading or like even like other forms of mediums, there is a struggle with the people that want to do this, but they also live in a world where it's very hyperactive with notifications and alerts and alarms. So I definitely think it's cool that you brought that up because I do think there are people that struggle with it, but they don't realize it's a struggle until another person says it. Like, oh yeah, it's been really hard for me like to focus on things while living, with like notifications around me or everything like that. So I think that's really cool that you brought that up, and yeah. For our final question, I just wanted to ask, and this has to go back with BookBase. So, BookBase really focuses on promoting the social aspect of reading. We definitely do see like a dip in people wanting to socialize around books. Maybe I know it definitely happened because of COVID, where maybe in-person book clubs weren't as prevalent. And then I think after, for example, coming out of high school, I hated reading. I was not into it at all. I read Catcher in the
mm,
Rye, and I was like, this is not a all-time favorite of mine. And I just felt like I had to keep on reading books that weren't tailored for me. Left it, and then during my MBA, my friend, the co-founders of BookBase, they both came up to me and they wanted me to read a book with them, and that's how I got back into reading. And so I just wanted to ask, like, was it like that for you when you were younger? At any point in your life when you just wanted to socialize around books? Like, has it ever any? Have you ever made friends over books, or have you ever had like a book club, or just any experiences where you read something, you're like, oh, this is sick, and you went to somebody else and you kind of talked to them about it?
um yes, the best. I love talking about books,
Mm-hmm.
and that when you saw me at Secret Headquarters, that was a week long tour with Ollie, and we read a lot of the same books, so we were just hanging out talking about books, and having arguments about them, and those are my favorite conversations. And it's uh, those those conversations are so meaningful, and well, they're entertaining, um, because it does sometimes feel like it's hard to find people who are into whatever obscure thing that you get obsessed with at that particular time. Um, so it buoys one's spiritual self, one's spirit,
Right.
um, to to knock around your argue about why you liked one book more than another book, or why I enjoy a good argument, um, for sure,
No, that's awesome, and I'm glad that you and Ollie read the
and
same
praise
books.
that.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
praise, but I like I can I like a good debate around a book.
Awesome. And what are your favorite books as of now? Have you finished anything that you're like you were recently obsessed over, or you were just really
Yeah,
excited
my
about?
I'll tell you, my obsession this year has been Fernando Pessoa's The Book of Disquiet. I
Ooh,
know
okay.
lots of people are obsessed with this book, but I read the Penguin Classics edition, and there, it's all, I'm not sure if you know, but it's all like 1 or 2 page long little segments.
Hmm.
This book, and it's so, um, to me, it's like the perfect like emo boy book. It's
Right.
like it's all about like the dreamer for the dreamers of the world, and it's very kind of romantic, but about being, I don't know, uh it plays into one's I don't know. It would be like I would it's not it's insanely enjoyable, and I just like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll read one section of it a few times, just how much I kind of enjoy spending time in it. I
Wow.
also read kind of, maybe not this year, but um uh the Louis Buñuel's autobiography,
Hmm.
My Last Sigh. um that also was insanely entertaining. um
Yeah, I
so
just
those
looked
are
it up
two.
right now. Yeah. That's cool. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. I think the Book of Disquiet definitely seems interesting to me because I was reading the synopsis right now while you were speaking about it or talking about it, and it definitely seems interesting. I definitely want to check that out. And I'm a huge biography person, so I definitely would look into My Last Sigh. But no, that's awesome, and it's really
You
cool.
can just read 2 pages of the Book of Disquiet and know whether or not you're going to be on board for it.
That's perfect.
It's all
Hey,
variations of one worldview.
that's cool. No, thank you for giving us that book recommendation. Hey, who knows if it ends up being a great book, maybe we can host a book club over it. That'd be awesome. Just because I think it'd be really cool to talk about different stories within the books and kind of like compare, just to express the thoughts that come out of reading stories like this that really do reach the hearts of like people that are creatives and they just want to express themselves. I think that's really cool. But yeah, no, thank you so much for being here for this interview, Dash. It was really amazing. I did say that if you are interested, please check out your social media at dash_Shaw on Instagram and your website dashshaw.net. But is there anything else that you would want people that watch this to check you out at, or are those the two platforms that you're good with?
No, that those are fine. Those are great.
Okay, perfect, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys again. Thank you.
Thank you.